The Indiana Fever fans were chanting, "Sophie, Sophie."
They didn't know, like, whoa, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe people are doing this to Caitlin Clark. Teammates weren't jumping in there. They bring in Sophie Cunningham. I had no idea. Sophie Cunningham was a black belt at the age of 6.
Yeah. Yep.
Boom.
Wow.
When they allow that stuff to happen, and it's been happening all season long. All season long. It's not just this game. It's been happening all season long. This is what happens, right? This is what happens. You've got competitive women who are the best in the world at what they do, right? And when you allow them to play physical and you allow these things to happen, they're going to compete. And they're going to have their teammates' backs.
All right, let's dive into a story that's been absolutely electrifying the sports world. A story that's about so much more than just a single moment in a basketball game. Imagine the scene. The roar of an arena, thousands of fans on their feet. And they're chanting a name. Sophie. 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 But here's the twist. This isn't for the game's highest scorer. Not for some unbelievable game-winning buzzer beater. This raw, explosive adulation is for a player who, just moments before, delivered a foul so hard, so deliberate that its shockwaves are still being felt. How does a WNBA role player, someone respected for her grit but not typically grabbing, the national headlines suddenly become an overnight sensation, potentially rocketing towards millions in endorsements? It wasn't a highlight reel shot. It was one single, unapologetic, hard foul. This is the incredible story of Sophie Cunningham. And how her now infamous flagrant foul wasn't just about defending her teammate, Caitlin Clark. It was a strategic masterstroke, a cultural lightning rod that exposed simmering tensions, activated a fan army unlike any other, and completely transformed her career and public image in what felt like a blink of an eye. The air in that arena during the game between the Indiana Fever and the Connecticut Sun wasn't just charged. It was a powder keg waiting for a spark. For weeks, maybe even months, a narrative had been building, a palpable frustration among fans. They'd watched with a mix of awe and growing anger. As Caitlin Clark, the rookie phenom who was single-handedly smashing viewership records and breathing new life into the league, was, to put it bluntly, being treated like a human piñata. Opponents were physical, overly aggressive, and it often felt like Clark was being deliberately targeted. This particular game, though, felt like it was escalating, like a line was about to be irrevocably crossed. It began subtly, then not so. Subtly, JCS Sheldon of the Sun took a swipe that made clear contact with Clark's face. A gasp from the crowd, a wave of indignation on social media. But then, moments later, Marina Mabrey delivered a blatant body check, sending Clark sprawling to the hardwood. It was the kind of aggressive non-basketball play that in many other professional leagues, especially the NBA, would likely trigger an immediate review and a swift ejection. The message from the Connecticut Sun seemed crystal clear. We're going to be physical, we're going to test her. But the message from the officiating crew, or perhaps the lack thereof, was arguably even more alarming to the fervent fanbase. A simple technical foul was deemed sufficient punishment for what many saw as a direct, aggressive assault on the league's brightest, most bankable star. It felt, too many, like an open invitation for more of the same. The game was rapidly transforming from a competitive sporting event into a public spectacle of what many perceived as blatant disrespect. And a growing sense of helplessness permeated the fanbase. It seemed like no one was willing or able to step in and say, enough. For those watching at home, glued to their screens, the emotion was a potent cocktail of anger, frustration, and a kind of bewildered disbelief. The league, which stood to gain immensely from Clark's generational talent and appeal, appeared to be idly standing by while its golden goose was getting roughed up. The frustration wasn't just about this one game. It was cumulative. It had been simmering all season long, with instance after instance of Clark taking hard hits, questionable fouls, and what many felt was insufficient protection from the referees. Competitive athletes are going to compete, they're going to play hard, and they're certainly going to have their teammates' backs. But when the officiating seems to allow a certain level of unchecked aggression against one specific player, especially a player of Clark's stature and importance to the league's growth, it creates a volatile situation. Something had to give. And then, with the game's outcome largely decided, the dynamic shifted in an instant. Sophie Cunningham, a veteran presence on the Fever roster, clearly decided she had witnessed enough. As JCS Sheldon drove towards the basket, Cunningham didn't just commit a foul. She delivered a statement. She met Sheldon with a force and deliberation that left absolutely no room for interpretation. It was unmistakably hard, unequivocally intentional. It was a flagrant foul, no doubt about it. But in the eyes of tens of thousands in the arena and millions watching worldwide, it was so much more. It was payback. It was a release. It was pure, unadulterated catharsis. That single, resounding thud of bodies colliding was the sound of a simmering pot finally boiling over. This wasn't just a random act of aggression or a cheap shot born of frustration, though. To interpret it so narrowly would be to miss the broader, more powerful undercurrents. Sophie Cunningham's foul was a declaration, a clear and unambiguous message broadcast not just to the Connecticut Sun, but to every single team across the WNBA. The message was simple. The era of taking free shots at Caitlin Clark, of targeting her with impunity, was officially over. If the officials weren't going to consistently protect her, then her teammates would. In that singular moment, Sophie Cunningham transcended her role as just another player on the court. She became the enforcer, the protector, the teammate who, finally, visibly, and forcefully said, "Enough is enough." For weeks, fans had been metaphorically screaming from the sidelines, posting endlessly on social media, asking the same desperate question: who is going to stand up for her? Who will have her back? In that split second, Sophie Cunningham provided the resounding answer. And it was an answer that would catapult her into an entirely new stratosphere of recognition. The immediate aftermath online was nothing short of explosive, a digital firestorm that, quite bizarrely, split public opinion into two fiercely opposing camps. On one side, a wave of outrage erupted. Critics, and perhaps those with a different rooting interest, were aghast. A petition even materialized online, passionately demanding that Sophie Cunningham be summarily dismissed from the WNBA, kicked out of the league for what they termed a disgusting display of unsportsmanlike conduct. Social media feeds were flooded with furious posts labeling her a thug, a danger to the sport, and calling for her immediate and lengthy suspension. The vitriol was intense, almost a mirror image of the adulation she was receiving elsewhere. But this very vocal outrage quickly, and rather spectacularly, exposed a glaring hypocrisy that had been lurking just beneath the surface of WNBA discourse. It turned out that just a few months prior, during a preseason game, Sophie Cunningham herself had been on the receiving end of a similarly hard foul, one that sent her to the ground. Back then, many of the same voices, or at least the same types of voices, now clamoring for her expulsion, were conspicuously silent. Or worse, were actually celebrating the aggressive play against her. Some even defended the aggressor in that instance, suggesting it was just good, hard basketball, or even encouraging more of that style of play. This stark contrast laid bare a rather uncomfortable truth for a significant portion of the critics. The issue wasn't the hard foul itself. The core of their outrage seemed to stem from who the foul was perceived to be defending. The battle lines were starkly drawn, and the war for public opinion had officially commenced, revealing a deep, and at times bitter, chasm within the WNBA's rapidly expanding and evolving fanbase. The digital world was alight, and the WNBA found itself at the center of a very passionate, very divided conversation, while the internet trolls sharpened their digital pitchforks and angry critics furiously typed their names onto that online. Petition Sophie Cunningham was, it seems, preparing the ultimate, perfectly executed clapback. She didn't engage in lengthy Twitter battles. She didn't release a carefully worded apology or a defensive statement. She didn't dive into the murky waters of online arguments at all. Instead, with a move that was both incredibly simple and profoundly powerful, she logged on to her social media and retweeted a post. Not just any post, but an announcement from the Indiana Fever's official merchandise store. Sophie Cunningham's number 9 Indiana Fever jersey had completely, utterly sold out. In that one elegant digital maneuver, she rendered the petition and much of the performative outrage instantly and almost comically irrelevant. The message, though unspoken, was deafeningly clear. You can complain, you can criticize, you can sign all the petitions you want. Bet the fans, the ones who actually buy tickets, watch games, and purchase merchandise, are voting with their wallets, and they're voting for me. It was a checkmate moment, a true masterclass in navigating modern media and leveraging public sentiment. She hadn't just weathered their outrage, she had ingeniously flipped it, turning their fury into her marketing campaign, proving that the groundswell of support for her actions wasn't just vocal, it was demonstrably, tangibly profitable. This meteoric explosion in popularity, this sudden surge in jersey sales and social media adoration, wasn't just some random fluke or a case of being in the right place at the right time, though timing certainly played its part. Sophie Cunningham had, perhaps unknowingly at first, tapped into one of the most potent and rapidly mobilizing forces in contemporary sports, the Clark Army. Caitlin Clark's fan base is not your typical sports following. It's unprecedented in its sheer size, its unwavering loyalty, its passionate engagement, and its incredible speed of mobilization. They don't just passively watch games, they actively participate in the narrative. They defend their star fiercely, and they lavishly reward anyone, absolutely anyone, who visibly stands with her or protects her. We'd already seen glimpses of this phenomenon. Sitter Kate Martin, a second-round draft pick from Iowa, who, largely due to her established connection and friendship with Clark, reportedly sold more jerseys than even the league's reigning MVP at one point. That's the power of the Clark Association. Now, amplify that. Imagine what happens when a player doesn't just share a locker room with Clark, but steps up, publicly and physically, to defend her at a moment when fans felt she was at her most vulnerable. When the perceived injustice was at its peak, Sophie Cunningham stepped squarely into the role of the bodyguard, the on-court protector. And in return, the Clark Army, in a matter of hours, helped make her a household name. Her social media engagement went through the roof. Her follower count skyrocketed by hundreds of thousands in less than 48 hours, and suddenly, Sophie Cunningham was everywhere. However, it would be a colossal misjudgment, a fundamental misunderstanding of who Sophie Cunningham is, to label her merely as a goon or an enforcer who just got lucky by capitalizing on a viral moment. The truth is, the star potential, or at least the makings of a significantly larger public profile, was always there, simmering beneath the surface. This incident simply threw a massive, unavoidable spotlight onto qualities she already possessed. Long before she donned the Indiana Fever jersey, Cunningham was already carving out a promising media career. She served as a charismatic and insightful TV analyst for the Phoenix Suns during the NBA season, demonstrating a natural ease and intelligence in front of the camera. She's well-spoken, articulate, and possesses the kind of engaging personality that broadcasters and brands adore. These are all critical components of building a modern athlete's brand. A brand that extends far beyond the four lines of the court. On the court itself, she's no slouch either. Cunningham is a respected veteran leader, known for her tenacity, her basketball IQ, and her dependable three-point shooting, a valuable asset for any team. especially a young and developing squad like the Fever. In fact, many astute basketball analysts had already pinpointed her signing as one of the Fever's most underrated and potentially impactful offseason moves. They recognized the value she brought in terms of experience, toughness, and clutch shooting. What they likely didn't anticipate, what perhaps no one truly anticipated, was just how rapidly the entire sporting world was about to discover these qualities, all thanks to one highly charged, perfectly timed act of defiance. She isn't just a bodyguard who can throw an elbow. She's a legitimate, skilled basketball player who now possesses an incredibly compelling and marketable narrative. A narrative that has instantly elevated her from respected role player to a potential household name. The so-called anti-Clark faction might have tried to frame her actions negatively, but the overwhelming surge of support told a very different story. So how exactly does a single, albeit impactful, foul translate into the kind of attention that could genuinely lead to millions of dollars in off-court earnings? It all begins with the powerful engine of social media. That colossal influx of new followers, the hundreds of thousands who flock to her profiles overnight, isn't just a vanity metric to be admired. In today's digital age, that's prime digital real estate. Brands, marketing agencies, and potential sponsors don't just see numbers. They see a direct, highly engaged channel to one of the most coveted, enthusiastic, and free-spending demographics in sports right now: the Caitlin Clark fanbase. That sudden, massive spike in attention immediately flings open doors that might have previously been closed or, at best, only slightly ajar. The online chatter wasn't just idle gossip. 'Twas the sound of opportunity knocking, very, very loudly.